My guest today is someone who knows how power works and also what it costs. Mattie Duppler is a seasoned political strategist whose career has placed her at the center of policy, politics, and influence. Her work has shaped national conversations, but most of all, her most important transformation happened off the camera. In this episode, we talk about roots of ambition, rebirth through truth, and what it means to keep your voice while reclaiming your life. This conversation is about clarity, courage, and choosing self-alignment. Mattie, welcome to Roots+Rebirth.
Terri, so good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Oh my God, this is going to be so much fun. Just to set this up for people that are listening and watching, Mattie and I worked together for almost 3 years at Amazon on the public policy team, where I have to say I had the time of my life. It was a time where I worked with some of the most brilliant people I knew, but it was also when I worked the hardest from an intellectual standpoint to also a physical standpoint. So to be with you now and just seeing the glow in your face and having, have so many fangirl moments of watching your Instagram and just being truly excited for the evolution and all that you're bringing to the world today. I am so excited to have this conversation.
But Terri, do you recall that we actually met prior to, not really, but we were online friends prior to being at Amazon together. And we both kind of realized it at the same time, oh my gosh, we've been chatting back and forth on Instagram. So the vibes had already brought us together. And then we landed in this environment that was just so categorically different than where we probably saw our lives going, which was just that was the universe giving us some kind of signal, which I always think about that, about how interesting that that transition was, that we were oh, we actually know each other. We've been attracted to one another online before, and now we're here together.
But it's now that when you say that, what month did you start? Because we started.
I started October of 2020.
Okay, and I was November. No,
yeah, you were
June.
Right after me.
Was it June? I don't know. I think it was June of 2020. I can't remember, something like that. Maybe November, but. What's wild is we were so busy that we didn't even have time to create magic or have conversations while we were there. Isn't that insane?
Well, it didn't help that we started during COVID, and having a company that is so large, spanning so many countries, but just the different environments. I was in DC, which of course was shut down for a long time. You were in Texas, which was a different story. But we didn't get the whole team, the whole division that we worked under together until March of 2022. It took us 2 years for us to all even be in the same room together.
This is so wild. And still feels like a lifetime ago.
For sure.
We were chatting a little bit before we started, and you were just reminding me of the timeline of what is your life. And I was telling you, I didn't get into it with you, but it is so wild how that timing lines up for me. And so I'll start in 2016. So for me, in 2016, I was at the American Heart Association, serving as vice president of government relations, leading about 30 people on a state team. And I was also very integrated in the junior league space, which was a space where a lot of women who were active in their communities wanting to serve. And so, that was a time when we had the opportunity to elect a female president and we didn't. And so I looked at what was happening around me in the political space where I worked and in this community leadership and volunteer space, kind of where I lived, because that was the other half of my life, and realized people wanted to take more ownership of their life. They wanted to be in more control and saw it as an opportunity to really create change, to start talking about what that could look like. And so that was the beginning of my blog. And around that time, my father also died. And I also starting to feel this pull of more is required of me in this lifetime. I need to do more than just being a number on an org chart. I needed to be an individual. And so it was so wild to me that that's sort of where you started this journey as well.
Yes, I think 2016, maybe that's why it's trending right now, 2016. 20 like a lot was happening obviously in the macro environment. But yeah, I had gone through kind of like a similar situation. Now, I was working on Capitol Hill and I was working for the highest ranking Republican woman. And I felt that we had a duty to reflect what the cultural moment looked like there, right? The fact that there was a lot of discussion now about how we're talking about women, how we're treating women in leadership roles. To your point, the main candidate on the Democratic side was a woman. And there was none of that. Like there was like very little discussion about how to preserve that leadership while still just acknowledging the difficulties of a two-party system, right? By summer, we were kind of all at the mercy of what was going to happen politically, at least on that side of the aisle. And watching that erosion of kind of like principled approach to politics was devastating for me because I am like a pointy-headed, green eyeglass wearing economics person where really the only thing that had influenced like my commitment to one side or the other had been just like the mathematics of it all and the economic, like the way I thought about economic policy. And so the bottom kind of fell out of that. I had met my husband working on the Hill. He had left the Hill, but like we had just moved in together. It was like a whole process of like, what is happening to this major tenant in my life that I thought would be a component of who I am in the future that now seems to have dissipated. And so I left the job in 2016, a couple weeks before the election, thinking again that the election would turn out the way everyone thought the election would turn out, that we'd have Hillary Clinton as president and Congress wouldn't change hands. And I went and I got trained to teach yoga. Like I really needed a moment to walk away from all of it to say like, what else is happening in the world? And when you live in DC, right, like inside the Beltway is a psychosis that people start to think like this is the way the world works. And of course, it is almost always the opposite of the way the rest of the country is thinking. But I really needed that, like I needed that detachment and I needed to force myself to go and like be a part of something that felt productive in a way that productivity hadn't been part of like how I hadn't been thinking about productivity, right? Because I'd been doing 12-hour days on Capitol Hill every day. Like that was what productivity had always been characterized as. And now I was like, maybe I go help people feel a little bit better about their day. And like one thing I'll just add about my yoga training that stuck with me and will stick with me for the rest of my life. We were talking about one day doing assists where you help someone into a position using like your physical body to do so, not just your words. And the instructor said something about how, people come to yoga. DC is it's a lot of people who didn't grow up here, don't have family around, et cetera, et cetera. People might be coming to yoga. This might be the first and only time that another human being touches them throughout their day. And that just like sat with me about the ramifications of doing something that was viewed as kind of peripheral in DC. Like if you're quitting your job to go teach yoga, like that is viewed as failure in DC, right? And to me, I was like, that'll have a bigger impact on someone's life potentially than like anything I've done in this political career.
Yes. Oh my God, that's wild. There's so much to unpack there, It's like you had to slow life down. That's why you left Capitol Hill, to really like digest what was happening in the world and understanding your place in it. And here you are, but still bettering yourself by becoming a yoga instructor. That is like next level learning and truly being in alignment with self.
Yes, I agree with you. I would love to say that that's exactly how I was thinking about the process. Of course, I wasn't. And I don't think, like I taught yoga for 3 years after that while still building my consulting business. So still having like one foot in this world. But I do think like those lessons, I've carried them with me now 10 years later. But like they didn't hit me in that first year. You know, like they continue to kind of pop up throughout the course of my journey as like a reminder of exactly what you just said, of how there needs to be a moment where you recognize how to take care of yourself. And like I know you've gone through this too, and I've seen so many high-performing women go through experiences where like their body is screaming at them to slow down. Like I got shingles at one point. I was in my 20s and I was getting shingles, which to my knowledge, I was like, I only know of like old people getting shingles. But you know, it was this stress reaction from my job. And just you get all of these kind of taps on the shoulder that you ignore for so long until you can't any longer. And in some ways, it's harder then to take that moment to really appreciate what you just described of like how you're going to build in a transformative mindset. Right then, you're kind of like in a fight or flight mode. You're just trying to get out and trying to pivot because you know where you are isn't working. And so I think for me, I do kind of appreciate that it's been a 10-year journey from that single decision where sometimes some of these learnings still show up when I didn't appreciate them in the moment.
Well, yes. You know, I want to finish on this and then point out something that I thought about. It's so true. Like the universe will slow you down so that you can almost catch up with yourself and stay true to that mission and the reason why you're here. You know, I kind of find myself here right now. I've been working so hard the last 3 years, standing up a government relations function that didn't exist. But I'm craving all these things, even though I, have spiritual practices that I'm very disciplined with, but I have sound healing training coming up soon, Reiki training coming up soon. It's like these are the things that will allow me to truly feel connected. But thinking about what you said about the people who are, in DC and working on Capitol Hill, like they do move to Capitol Hill, sometimes only with one suitcase and a dream, and they might not get a hug. Like there's so much research that says physical touch actually like makes you a better leader. So as you were saying that, I hadn't thought about that. Like how wild is that?
Yeah. And I think the same thing is true of kind of having mental rest, right? Like that was why I initially sought out yoga, was so I could carve out that time to sit and be with myself, because you're not doing that when you're working 12-hour days. You're constantly focused on externalized problems, which are important in their own right. But I think in the same way that physical touch can have some of these more metaphysical consequences, you need that space and that time mentally and emotionally to be able to grow on those planes too. And it's, I think, very, very difficult, particularly if you are a very ambitious person and you're in your 20s when like you're trying to build this career, to remember how important those pieces are too, because they don't feel the same level of productive as the hustle and churn always does.
Yeah. That was the biggest gift that Amazon gave me. It was when I was at Amazon where I had my first medium reading, met a shaman for the first time and started doing energy work consistently. And so there's so much truth to what you just said and how you laid that out. So as hard as I worked and as many docs as I wrote, I am grateful for that gift because I absolutely would not be the person I am today without that opportunity.
And you mean like what Amazon gave you because it kind of pushed you over the cliff into needing that. Is that what you're saying?
I was on that hamster wheel, girl.
Yeah.
I'm like, how many of Mattie's meetings did I miss because I was somewhere else or doing something else? Like, it was
yes. Yes, it was a time. That is for sure.
Hey, y'all, it's Terri. Transformation doesn't happen by accident. It's a daily practice. And BestSelfCo gives you the tools to live with purpose. From guided journals to productivity decks, every product is designed to help you dream bigger, reflect deeper, and take aligned action. Visit BestSelfCo and use the code Terri for 15% off. Your next breakthrough starts with one small step, and today is a beautiful day to begin. So we're talking about a moment where maybe life interrupts your momentum and you're trying to figure out where you want to go and just putting those pieces together. And that was when you built your consulting firm for the first time. How did you know you were ready? What tools did you use? And like how did you find the chutzpah to get it done?
I will say I was not ready one iota. I had no game plan. I had absolutely like no mentors to point me in the right direction. The only thing I had really was kind of a nothing to lose attitude. And again, like this kind of the bottom falling out of how I thought political philosophy was going to play out in DC was good because it gave me a little bit more gumption of, well, we've already sailed past whatever expectations I had for the future. I no longer even think that this might be the road for me. So in that sense, there's no foundation that I'm worried about injuring by going out on my own and trying something new. I also was younger. I had no mortgage. I had no kids. And that was like motivating for me. I was like, I can take as much risk as I want because I know in 10 years, I'm going to have a lot more responsibility and it's going to be a lot harder for me to try to do this. So that honestly, like the absence of like real, real reason to do that is really what motivated me to jump right in. And I made a lot of mistakes. I learned a lot on my feet. And that's, to compare back to our Amazon time, I mean, that's when I'm the happiest, is if I'm learning and being challenged. That is, I think, probably one of the things I took away from building my own business is like, that is what lights me up. I need to know that my challenge tomorrow is going to be different than the one I confronted today. If it's going to be the same one over and over and over again, I have no interest in that life. That is not interesting to me. That is an existence that feels an existence that just feels not meaningful. And so that was, I think, the frame that I was working with to jump in with both feet.
Well, I mean, it takes like real bravery to do that. So many people, when they're talking about starting businesses, that like they can't take that first step because they're afraid or they feel like they don't have enough money or they don't have the right mentors or connections to get that first contract. How did you trust yourself to make that leap? Because I know someone is listening right now and that's the question that they have and what they're thinking about.
You know what? That is a great question. Again, I kind of think it was a little bit of a conversation with future Mattie, right? Like I knew that future Mattie would be pretty upset if she didn't try. And I also knew, again, I'd had some really, really high profile roles. I had gotten the jobs that are kind of like the creme de la creme. If you're working in Washington, D.C., like the high powered leadership role on Capitol Hill. I've been on media and cable news every day. Just like stuff that is exciting. And I'm grateful for those opportunities. But I knew that that was not going to fill me up forever. So if the things that you're supposed to be striving for are not filling you with purpose, I knew that I had to try something new. Otherwise, I was sentencing myself to a life that didn't feel like it had purpose. I was sentencing myself to working day in, day out in an environment, even if it wasn't those exact jobs, that I knew was not built for me. So that really alone, that singular conviction is really what pushed me into it. All the rest of it, the logistics, how am I going to do this? How am I going to pay my bills? How do I even set up an LLC? Right? Like all of that, no idea how to do it. And I need to remind any of your younger listeners, there was no ChatGPT. Like you didn't have an AI
No,
business partner to ask these questions to. You
this is like
just figured it
Instagram
out.
10 years ago, right?
Right? I mean, the amount that I have been able to offload on AI this time around versus it's like amazing. Just amazing what you can get done now as a single contributor. But yeah, I think like that conviction, almost like in a blind way, is what drove me to try new things because I knew I needed something that made me feel more alive than anything I'd tried in the past.
Yeah. Well, that's like a whole word. I mean, like that is a TED talk that you really should probably give somewhere. And it's also not a one and done, right? Like I have felt exactly like how everything you just stated resonated. But then I've also found myself short, maybe 2 or 3 years later in a space where it's like, whoa, like things are not in alignment. Do I feel as passionate today as I did like 3 years ago? Like it's so easy for you to just get back on that hamster wheel. And maybe not a hamster wheel that feels like you're working so hard, because sometimes I think of a hamster wheel and think about it as productivity, but it's like almost like you're back to doing the same things you were doing and not recognizing and not really living consciously. So for this year, I challenged myself, I've had a word of the day for more than 10 years, but I was like, what is the word of the year going to be? And so I meditated and thought about it, and nothing came by January 1st. Then I started hearing like integrity. And I was like, okay, but that doesn't really feel right. Like, doesn't feel like something like I really want to share with others because there was like this little sand in the word. And so I looked it up, and it's really about like an external force, like a system, like being true to a system, something that exists, and really fulfilling the expectations of that system. And I was like, okay, intuitively, that's what I was hearing. So it took me like another couple of days, almost a week. And then I found fidelity and
Mm.
learned more about the meaning of fidelity. And that is more like faithfulness to a person, to a cause. And I was like, okay, I can get with this. And it's more a demonstration around loyalty and support, but there really wasn't this external vibe. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to add self to it and have self fidelity. And then I
Mm.
was like, okay, like this is my word. And so like what you just laid out is that in action, and you found that at a very young age. And so I really want to point out for people if they think that they're there, like don't think it's a one and done. Like it's something you have to work consistently at, and you just cannot give up on it. And so this year it's, I'm ruthlessly prioritizing everything around that word. And if it is not in alignment, it has to fall by the wayside. If it's work, if it's family related, if it's even tied to myself. And so in the last month, I've resigned from 4 nonprofit boards, and
The fact that
I
you even had 4 to resign from, right? Like four in and of itself is a ton. That's a ton of work.
but it was like these are like no longer in full alignment with where I am headed in life. And so I can't take up that seat, so it's not even like there was no guilt because it's not like, oh, I'm going to let them down. No, there's someone else that wants that seat and is dying to have it. So, like, welcome to the team.
Yeah. And you know what one of my mantras is? Again, sorry, this is turning into a yoga podcast, but it's inner drishti. It's like your drishti in yoga is like your gaze. It's what's centering you and kind of
Okay.
what's giving you focus and like purpose on your mat. And it really is used as a tool when you're teaching something like balance to a student, right? Like you tell them to find a drishti, a spot on the wall to help center themselves. And for me, like inner drishti, like really speaks to that whole concept of like trusting your intuition, but also knowing that you have a gaze inside of you that is guiding you somewhere. And
Yeah.
like that, there is a centering that exists that is almost magnetic in nature, the way the world rotates around a pole, right? It's like you have that instinct and that fidelity to your own purpose. It's hard to pay attention to it. Like, heck, that's the hardest part is paying attention to it. It's not doing whatever it tells you. It's like figuring out that there is something guiding you. And so like, that's one of the things that I carry with me is like, I have an inner drishti and I need to make sure that I'm consulting it when I'm making big decisions. Because so far it's so good. It has, it's led me down a lot of paths that seemed like the wrong path at the time. But again, if you're not learning, what's the point?
It's like so much fun. I love that we can also geek out about this, and still hold the range of being people that work in political space.
I mean, like one of my bookers
But
once said that to me about how like I'm this economics geek who teaches yoga. Like I'm like such like this paradox, particularly in the DC
yeah,
world. And I am who I am, right?
Get it, girl. So I want to go back to this notion of what was cool in 2016 is like cool again today. Like I love it. I noticed the other day that in January of 2016, I injured my arm and I was wearing a cast. Well,
Ooh,
this January I was on crutches from a ski accident.
no, Terri.
I'm like, yes, it holds true. But you are like a badass. Like you have been on CNBC, like all of the cable, stations, like educating people on economics, and now you're like breaking it down for your clients. You're still like in the media, but you've made it accessible for all of us on Instagram. I'd love for you just to share a little bit of what you're doing now and how you're bringing others along. 'Cause I think that's the coolest part.
Well, thanks, Terri. And let me just maybe say a couple words about how I got there. When I came to DC, like again, kind of doe-eyed, no connections, not knowing what I was going to do. It was the depths of the recession in 2008. No one was hiring. I thought I was going to go work in international relations, right? Like I'd done like a study abroad thing. Like I was like, oh, I'll find a job. I applied to hundreds. Nobody called me back, right? I eventually got what was a paid internship, which was very unique at the time, at a tax lobbying firm. And like that's what
Wow.
launched me into even caring about economic policy. Like I didn't even take a math class in college. I thought I was done with
I
this
didn't
stuff.
either. Oh my God. Nothing on
And all of
mustard.
right? Then all of a sudden I'm like crunching numbers on a CBO score.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow, this is not where I thought I'd be. But like that has so informed my perspective on this world. Cause I always felt my whole family's in medicine. I'm the only Black sheep who's like a liberal arts person.
I
So
love
I
it.
was always made to feel kind of like less than, right? Like I was like the dumb Black sheep who was doing the touchy-feely philosophy stuff, not like the hard science of medicine. And I kind of realized through doing, again, that if I can understand economic policy, anyone can. Because this I did not think was going to be my ministry. And I, went from that to doing media on those topics. And I realized very quickly doing media and being in cable news that like you got to get to your point. You got to go in there with 3 things you want to say, and you'll probably get to say 1. And that process of like really distilling my thoughts down into talking points also led me to understand that like this is what people need to understand the broader picture, right? Like it's very difficult when news, and again in 2016 it wasn't as bad as it is now, but when news is geared towards sensationalizing you and making you feel something rather than teaching you something, like we're missing the point here. And of course, as you know, in the United States, like we're not teaching finance, we're not teaching personal finance or budget, like we're not teaching these skills that are essential skills for modern life. And then we like expect people just to get it. It's like the biggest disconnect, both in kind of our approach to how we look at public policy and political decisions, and like how we're thinking about education of our children, which is a probably whole nother podcast discussion we should have. But during the pandemic, again, about transformation, I had my first child right before the pandemic. So I had this like horrific postpartum year of like trying to figure out how to be a parent while the whole world is shut down. And rather than like, trying to recover from that, I decided to go to grad school, just like layer on top of things.
I
So I
do
went and got a
remember
master's,
you working and
right?
grad school. Insane.
And that's one of the reasons I took the Amazon job was I was doing TV between like, prime time is 5 to 9 a.m. And I was like, I need that time to study. I have no other time to study. I'm a parent who works full time. But the point of, I went to school, I went to a prestigious school and got a master's in finance. That process really indicated to me that there is so much about the current environment built around policy and finance that is just only gatekeeping, right? It was like very the emperor has no clothes going through that experience where, and there's like a great Obama quotation about this, about like you get in the rooms and the people aren't that impressive. Like that was my experience. And, maybe this is like a little bit too pointed to be saying publicly, but, most of the people I was quote unquote learning from were not practitioners. They were academics, which there's nothing wrong with that, except for, again, my whole lens on the world is we're learning this stuff to apply it in real life. And so there was that missing thread of being able to articulate, here are the mechanics, but here's how it shows up in the real world, was just so blatantly obvious to me and felt like malpractice that I felt like I needed to do something about it. And this is why, we talked about with restarting my consulting business. Yes, I'm doing the client work that pays the bills, et cetera. But I'm so focused on creating now because I see how important being able to speak that truth is. Like that motivates me more than any paycheck I'm going to get. And that's why I just, again, I've done media for, I'm gonna date myself, 15 years now. Podcasts have been relatively new up until probably the last several years. And everyone was always like, why don't you have a podcast? Why don't you have a show? Why don't like it? And it never really clicked for me until I had all of these different experiences showing me how so much of the confusion comes from the infrastructure that is not built to teach. And I am someone who certainly never thought I was going to go get a graduate degree in finance. And I bet, 90% of the people I know who are brilliant people feel the same way and get confused by economic headlines. And there's no reason for it, right? We just need to have the language and the context be a more consistent part of the conversation. So that's the void that I'm trying to fill now with all of the content I put out on Instagram and on my podcast. I call the podcast the Tradeoff so that people can appreciate the headline's not telling you the whole story. There's always a trade-off that's been made. And actually, like those economic mechanisms, understanding those is what's going to allow you to recognize patterns in your own life, patterns in current events, so you can foresee what something happening today might mean for you in the future as well.
Yes.
And that's what like motivates me to be even creating content on these topics.
I mean, I love it. And Mattie, I think of course you know this, but I worked at 3 TV stations before I started lobbying. And part of the way that the news is structured, it's so quick. And it is so that we're not asking more questions, that we have just enough fed to us to feel informed. But we also, the general public, we don't want to hear bad news. And so like, the only way to learn what that trade-off is, good or bad, is to have more information. And so I love that you're doing this in a podcast that's a longer format so people can truly learn. They can hear you ask the questions. They can become educated. And you have such a great personality. You make it fun. And it's something that it can be understood by anyone. I also did not take math class. I can follow what you're saying. And for me now, working in the financial services sector.
Yeah, exactly.
More.
Yeah. And I mean, like that to me, I just feel like the way it could open doors for people, right? Like I want the Gen Z Mattie and Terries of the world to think like, hell yeah, I can get a job, even though I know nothing about finance. Because trust me, all of the finance bros sitting in there actually doing the finance work have almost the same number of qualifications that you do. Like you can learn anything. It's really more about if you have the confidence to go into a position knowing that you understand the mechanics and you're bringing an expertise that's important. The subject matter stuff is almost secondary. And I just feel like, especially women, they see finance in something and they start to feel like not even start to feel, society has told them that they shouldn't understand that. This is too inaccessible. It's designed that way. It's a design flaw. It's not a you flaw. And that's what I hope my listeners understand.
This is like adjacent, but not really related, but it's hella funny. So I had dinner last night with someone who is starting a podcast and owns a recruiting firm, and it was rated by Forbes I'm pretty sure it was Forbes, but like the number 1 recruiter in the country.
Nice.
And they were just saying how, and I'm thinking about this because you were talking about how women, we feel like we have to have every box check. We have to have so many degrees before we can feel like an expert. And he was saying how he could not find a job. So he started following a woman's blog. And this woman was talking about her day-to-day work and her team and what they were learning and what they were doing and building. And he just took it all in and personified what he was reading in the blog and started interviewing and was getting these incredible jobs just from reading a blog.
Wow.
It was the first time, and like I could not stop laughing because I was like, "What?"
Wow.
But it's like the best fake it till you make it story, but it's like, no, you don't have to have all the information. You don't have to have all these degrees or pedigrees. You can be an expert today. I don't recommend
Totally.
that anyone read a blog and emulate it, but you can have a more thoughtful dinner conversation around finance if you follow in economics, if you follow your blog and your
Well,
Instagram.
and I just think that it's okay to ask questions. Like we've
Yeah.
gotten into this rhythm, and this is true across different industries, where like it's not okay to be a learner, which I reject that outright. And this is part of what parenting has taught me about just approaching my professional life, which is that everything is about learning. And if you have a love of learning, you will be successful no matter where you go, because you know that the journey is part of the point, right? The destination is not. I was literally having this conversation this morning with my daughter about rocket math, which is, I don't know if you remember this. Remember we had like the sheet of like 100 addition problems and you got like a minute and they told you to, and I think I never got more than 5. Like I could not do math quickly. I don't remember being more stressed out in elementary school than when we were doing this process. And my daughter loves math, is great at it, doesn't stress her out
Wow.
whatsoever. But she was talking about how she had like progressed to the next level. And I was like, kid, that's the whole point. Like the journey and the learning, like it's a tool to get you to a point where you have different ways to look at math. It's not to fill out the whole sheet. This is just a way to learn how to learn. And the most
Yeah.
important thing is that you continue to want to learn. I don't care how you score on these things. I want you to want to learn. And that's the thing I tell all my kids' teachers. I was like, I don't really care. I mean, I care a little bit how they're doing, but like I really, what I worry the most about is making a decision that would erode their love for learning, because that is so critical to success later on and feels like, honestly, like the biggest indicator of whether or not you're going to be successful more than anything else.
I love it. So I do want like people to learn something cool. So like they are definitely going to follow your Instagram, and that is just your name. We'll definitely give it at the end of our time together. But if they were to read one article or one book or one concept, what is the most critical thing for them to do right now?
Ooh, most critical. It's a good question, Terry. Here's what I would say. I think learning about some of the mechanisms that exist outside of Congress passing laws and the president signing executive orders can go a long way. For me, that was learning about monetary policy. And again, like I got my start in fiscal policy. That's taxes and spending. That's the stuff that Congress does. That's how I came to understand this world. Monetary policy is controlled by the Federal Reserve, which is not an elected body, but is critical to how the economy continues to function. And I would suggest people learn about that because it gives you a perspective on how it gives you a perspective outside of kind of our bipartisan lens, right? Like there's a right and a left philosophy about the economy. Monetary policy transcends that. And I think if you're looking to learn about the American economy, this will give you a good understanding that you're not going to get from reading something that is focused more on current events. So there's 2 books that I really like.
Okay.
One is Gina Smialek. It's like Jeanna Smialek. She wrote a book about the Federal Reserve that's phenomenal because it goes through kind of like, here's why this like very esoteric agency is super important to your modern life. And then I'm going to have to look up what the other book is called. It's like a history of the Federal Reserve, which I know sounds terrible. I get it. Like, listeners, I get it. A history of the Federal Reserve sounds terrible. What is so fascinating about it is to understand that the United States was so Johnny-come-lately on having a central bank. Like in the 20th century, in times when like our great-grandparents or grandparents were alive, we had no central bank and we were the only developed country that didn't have one. Like Europe was looking at us like, what are these noobs doing? They have absolutely no way to respond to an economic crisis. Like they are going to be screwed.
I mean,
And
now, just
what's that?
like,
And, it's just fascinating to see how this is I mean, everything that has to do with American government is relatively new compared to the rest of the world. But this aspect in particular is a relic of just the 20th century and could continue to evolve. Certainly is experiencing very new and interesting pressures and frictions right now. But I think it's such a good glimpse into how there's a whole way of thinking about the economy that has nothing to do with politics and has a profound impact on what your household budget looks like.
Well, those are good. And that's good. It's my homework assignment. I don't know about either of those books.
I'll send you the links so you can put them in the show notes since I butchered the actual names. But they're good reads and they're, I think, again, useful context. Which is what I'm trying to provide so folks can make up their own minds about what's important to them.
Well, I have a couple more questions for you. Hopefully they're all fun. I feel like Rebirth just calls me to think about legacy. And, I am like 2 years away from 50, which is so wild. So I think about how do I want to live the back half of life? What does legacy mean to you? Especially as you have this moment of rebirth and you're creating like this Mattie 3.0.
Yeah. I mean, Terri, that is the $1 million question. This is like what, if that's kind of what nudged me into this in 2016, that is wholeheartedly what drives me now, is that like, what is the template for life that honestly, like my kids are going to remember this most. Like they're not going to remember what I was doing in 2016, mostly because I only had one. My other kids were born later. But like they've all been so little, they're now just starting to become real humans. And it's so important for them to see me living by doing. Like I don't want my life to be theoretical. I want like when my kids look back at their childhood, they look back at like who I am as a person.
Yeah.
They understand it via action. They don't think about me in terms of like, oh, she wanted to do this. She liked to do that. I want them to know that I was going to like live as a witness because there's really no other way. And for me, again, like I came from a family where like everyone was doing one thing. Everyone was in medicine. Like that was the way of life. And so I just want my kids to feel like they've got the world in front of them and it's their oyster. And again, like it kind of goes back to my philosophy about if you grow up feeling like learning is the point.
Yeah.
To me, it feels like that's like you've achieved that then. Like your kids probably feel like they have license to go on and do whatever it is they want. And like I guess that's how I'm thinking about it. But, I think that let me restate that. I'm convinced on my deathbed, which God willing, we're all going to be in the hundreds by the time that happens for us. I'm convinced I will still be asking myself this question. Like, what is it that I want to do when I grow up? Like, I could be on my deathbed and I'll still be like, what's like the next thing I can do to provide that sense of legacy, And so I don't know. I don't think I'm ever going to have a definitive answer to that question, but I ask it every day. And maybe that's enough.
Absolutely, it is enough. Well, last question. Hey, y'all, it's Terri. Transformation doesn't happen by accident. It's a daily practice. And BestSelfCo gives you the tools to live with purpose. From guided journals to productivity decks, every product is designed to help you dream bigger, reflect deeper, and take aligned action. Visit BestSelfCo and use the code Terri for 15% off. Your next breakthrough starts with one small step, and today is a beautiful day to begin. What brings you joy and what are your spiritual practices?
Oh, great question. I mean, my youngest is 1. So I am just now starting to like get to do the things that are my spiritual practices. For the longest time, it was running and yoga. Running because it's repetitive and it feels like it sucks most of the time. You know, it just, I've been running for decades and decades, and I've run marathons, and I still wouldn't say that I enjoy it. I would say that I love it. And there's a difference there where it's the commitment to the practice is what I love. The actual out there huffing and puffing, I don't know, could take or leave it. And same thing with yoga. I don't know that I ever quiet my mind unless it's with yoga. I will say I have added another practice that is not physical. And I hope your listeners don't think I'm being glib, because I'm not. And it's puzzling. I love to sit down and do a puzzle. And what I do is I put on an audiobook and I sit and I puzzle, because the audiobook keeps my brain from thinking about anything else.
Oh, wow.
And the puzzle keeps me doing something, so that I'm not just kind of sitting listlessly. And that is just the right level of stimulation for me to reach a flow state. And it's it's so silly sounding, but it's I can decompress doing that better than probably, a 10-day resort trip to a spa. It's just
incredible.
those are my practices. And honestly, what brings me joy, I have been doing. So, we moved from DC to Atlanta 3 years ago. I was still working for Amazon remotely. I had no human interaction. I mean, for me, I've always been an extrovert. And now what brings me joy is just getting to be out there and be amongst people. Don't care who it is. I want to be amongst people who are like me, who are not like me. It's just it's brought this kind of renewed sense of, I just love getting to hear people's stories and interacting with people to learn about what excites them and how that aligns with who I am. That is just what I think really kind of lights me up and what I'm trying to make more space for.
I love it. Tell us how to follow you, your website and Instagram handle, all the things.
Yeah. So, everything my name, which is easy enough if you know how to spell it. So my website is Mattie Duppler. My name is spelled with T's, which really throws people. So it's MattiEDuppler. On Instagram and on YouTube, I'm Mattie DC. So again, Mattie DC. YouTube, you'll find a bunch of clips from the podcast. So if you're someone who's kind of working your way up to having an attention span for 10 minutes, you've got 1 minute, 30 seconds on YouTube. So maybe start there. And then I just love interacting with listeners. People are sending, when someone sends me a message saying, hey, I saw this headline and I thought about what you said about X and I'm wondering why. That, maybe that's a better answer to your question, Terri. That lights me up. That makes me feel whatever I'm doing is working, because people are thinking critically about context and about how an economic headline, how there's more to the story and how that could be meaningful to them. So encourage folks to check me out there. And we'll continue to produce the podcast for as long as we've got listeners. And I'll continue to post hot economic takes on Instagram for as long as, we've got folks there. And I hope that everybody joins me there.
I love it. Oh my gosh, you're so much fun. Thank you just for your willingness to share your story, the hard parts, the fun parts. I feel like you just remind us that a rebirth isn't about erasing, what you've done or who you are. It's just about being real with where you are and where you're headed and all the things you want to do. So,
and Terri, like I said, it's so fundamental to, I think, who you are, the fact that you and I were online friends before we ever met in person. It's just your energy draws people in a way that is authentic, but also just so unique. And I love that I just love that what you do is like a fire starter, right? It's you're trying to light people up, and we need way more of that in this world. If we had more of it, we wouldn't have a lot of the problems that we have. So it's been like such a delight getting to be a real friend with you, not just an online friend. So and I think we could probably, this podcast could be 10 hours long, and we probably wouldn't. We would never run out of things to say, because it's just so much fun to get together and share about what's exciting us and what we hope for the world. So thank you for being you. Thank you for being such a trusted friend while we were traveling the Amazon the Amazon jungle together and beyond.
Oh my gosh, I want a Zoom date soon because there's still a lot to talk about.
Yes. Or I got to make it back to Austin one of these days. I would love, I'm trying to make it to DC as often as I can. So let's do it.
All right. Well, I want to encourage everyone to go to your website and Instagram and YouTube right now. And thank you again, Mattie. We'll be talking to you soon.
Thank you, Terri.
Hey, y'all. Hey, before I go, a reminder that this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not professional advice. If you need medical, legal, or mental health support, please consult a qualified professional. Be sure to subscribe and follow Roots+Rebirth podcast. You can find me at Terri R. Broussard and movementmakercollective.com. Until next time, it's Terri R. Broussard. I'm cheering you on.